first intro slides now, I think.
Perfect. So welcome everybody to, I think it's around about our sixth maybe of these webinars, brought to you by the Drainage and Water Searches Network. They've been super popular so far. We're really grateful to everybody that shows up and listens to, mainly Johnny in fairness, but with me with a little preamble. If we just shift on to the next slide. Yeah, that's me. So, Owen Davis. So I chair the Drainage and Water Searches Network, and the rest of the time I manage the CON29DW business effectively at Severn Trent Searches. So, and there's me, and there's Johnny, and Johnny, you can introduce yourself. I don't need to do it for you.
Yeah, good morning all. Johnny Davey. I've done a couple of these with Owen. So the fact that you've shown up, and if it's showing up again, I appreciate that. You haven't let my presentation skills put you off too much. Johnny Davey, also DDPSN member through my job at Geodesys. So Geodesys are responsible for the Anglian Water and the Southern Water CON29DW. We're part of the Anglian Water group. So we cover those two geographical areas. And looking forward to presenting another one of these to you good folk.
Yeah, so I mean, from feedback from previous polls, which I'll talk about in a second, one of the things that was raised was, could we do something about effectively red flags? What are those things that fall in a CON29DW residential or commercial that that would cause you to be maybe slightly alarmed? So the things that we need to know about, so why they matter. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to give some good examples within each of those areas, so you can see sort of real life examples of what to look out for. Just to really, the question and answer session is over. So if you get the Q&A button at the top of the screen, you can use that all the way through. I can see them as they come in, so if you put a question in, then if it's appropriate, we'll just ask it straight, in the middle of the presentation if it's fits nicely with what we're talking about at that point, or we'll do them all at the end. So please feel free to put your questions in whenever you like. Also, there's a poll at the top of the screen, so if you could have a look at that. So if you click the polls button, we would really appreciate your feedback through that as well, because that helps us shape what we want to do in the future. So there it is on the screen now. You can put in there, as I say, what topics you might like us to cover going forward. So you might want to put that off the screen now, Johnny. It's on your in front of the slides on my screen.
I didn't put it up, so
oh, interesting. Okay,
some
I can take it off
assistant
myself.
beavering away in the background may have.
That's all right. I've taken it off in front of the screen now. So, okay, who are the Drainage and Water Searches Network? Very briefly, it's just a trade body basically of the water companies in England responsible for the production of CON29DW residential and commercial, which I hope all of you have heard of. I don't really want to go into any more detail than that, but we like it. It's a great product, and the following slides will give you an indication as to why we think it's such a great product. But if you move on, Johnny.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. So as Owen indicated today, we're just going to cover off. I've probably only got about 7 slides to put you through, so stay with us, and you'll hopefully have learned something useful at the end. Red flags and how they help you and your client. So that's what we're going to discuss today. Which red flags? How did we come up with this? Well, we talked to our fellow members, of course, the people who create the CON29DW across the country. We polled them, and they in turn tended to ask their customers as well. I'm just getting, there we go. And so we said, well, we're going to cover off what are they, how do they appear, and we've settled on these couple that are the areas we're going to cover today. So we're going to talk about connections, and often, of course, lack of connections in both water and sewerage, assets within the boundary, and why that's something you should be looking out for. Adoption agreements we'll touch on, a very important element of the report, and internal sewer flooding. Thankfully, relatively uncommon, but every time it does happen, you for your client really need to know about that. So as Owen said, we'll take any questions at the end, but also as we go along. If you pop a question in the Q&A, Owen will see it, read it, either have the answer or interrupt me and we'll just discuss it, because it's probably going to be useful for everybody if it's the right sort of question. And then at the end, I will put up that classic slide of just saying any questions, and you can also pile in at the end there. And as Owen said, please do the poll if you can, it helps us. Okay, red flag. What is a red flag and why do they matter? Well, they're just something within the CON29DW report that we think you really ought to know about. And we're just calling them red flags here to cover, that covers all eventualities where it's just something being especially highlighted to you. The CON29DWs, some look different than others, but they'll almost all have a summary sheet with an indication on that first page dashboard or similar that kind of says, oh, just take note of this one. It might be a red cross or a question mark or literally a red flag. But it's an obvious kind of warning marker that says you need to just pay attention to this bit within the summary. There are 23 questions in the CON29, residential 25, 26 on the commercial. But that summary sheet will give you just a little nod to say, oh, just check this out. And we recommend that you do that as early as possible in the process, as soon as you've got the report. One of the beauties of the CON29DW is that most of the DWSN members who produce it could arrange a site visit or an investigation if something needed looking into deeper. But guess what? The timing and the arranging of that may not fit in with your need for getting the transaction over the line. So please do it as soon as you possibly can. If any of the creators of the CON29DW can help identify the issue or clear it up or correct the data and rerun the report, then they need to know as soon as possible, because that sort of collaborative approach between you and them is great, but it's no good if it's not in time for you to complete your transaction. And that's one of the key benefits of the CON29, of course, that audit support, that trail back to the data that may need changing, of course, at some point. Not all reports on the market have that ability, so it's really important to make use of that if you can. So the first one, connections, and in this example I've got just one more as well on the next slide of connections, but this is about surface water. So here's a real life example. We ask in the CON29DW, does surface water from the property drain to a public sewer? And this was a house. Oh, I've gone on. Excuse me, I'm getting stuck on my. There we go. This is an example where a property, maybe is not connected and not billed or have records that are up to date. And so in this example, a house in near Stoke-on-Trent, submitted by one of our members, the billing records for the property confirmed that it was connected and charged for foul and mains water, but not for surface water drainage. Okay, so the report confirmed that there's no surface water connection, hence the red flag. If it's not connected for surface water, how is that dealt with? How is that surface water dealt with? Customer queried this and sent a bill in and said, oh, no, here's surface water drainage. It's all there on the bill. It is connected. Your records are wrong. But actually, the billing showed that it was only for highways drainage. So not surface water drainage from the house. That was still under an S104, which is an S104 agreement, instead of being transferred in October 2011 when all the foul sewers were transferred as public. So some of these things can be quite complex. So in this example, to make things kind of worse, Severn Trent, it was Owen's team, they reviewed the information that had been used to form the report and found that the surface water sewers had recently been adopted. And so the record of the property just hadn't been changed yet. It's just a timing issue. So it was kind of valid for the customer to say, oh, no, it is. But that incorrect information actually revealed something else upon investigation. So I guess the key point here is that if that data doesn't seem quite right, and we're flagging it that surface water doesn't seem to be connected. So where is it? Is there a soak away? Does it go to a culvert or a water course in some way? We just need to flag that up to you. In this example, the customer said, no, it is, because I can see it on the bill. Well, that's the wrong type of surface water, actually. But all it was a timing issue. And so upon Severn Trent investigating this, they were able to review the data, change the data, amend the report, and resend it out. And so no other action was needed. But that all came about because of that first red flag to say, oh, something doesn't quite seem right here. It could be absolutely fine, or there's a soakaway. I've got a soakaway at the back of my house. That's where my surface water goes to. So that's okay, because Anglian Water, Severn Trent Water in this case, excuse me, wouldn't know that. Might not know that. Another one, connections. This is on the water side. So in this example, it got flagged as a red flag because it was flagged as the data said it was not connected for water. Now, somebody going to look around a house, flushes the toilet, turns the taps on. Oh yeah, of course it's connected for water. Who was this? Yorkshire Water. Stupid old Yorkshire Water. They've got that data wrong. Of course it's connected. I can see it's connected. Drinking water coming out of the taps, no problem. Ask the owner, you're connected, right? Yeah. Okay, in this example, the account was not connected to the water because it came to light that Yorkshire Water looked into it and there was a private water supply for that whole area. And so there was known to be a private water supply in this example. So it's always going to be a concern to us, and it should be to you for your buyer, that a property isn't connected for water. And if our report says it's not, something wrong. Red flag, needs investigating. Speak to the seller, speak to the seller's conveyancer or solicitor side, ask the question. TA6 form is probably ticked, said, yeah, of course it's connected. But actually, in this example, Yorkshire Water said, no, not to us, it's not. So that's why this is so vital to be flagged. You should always worry if there's some issue with that on water or main sewerage connections. But in this example, it's okay. The prospective buyer was able to say, oh, okay, I get it. There's a private supply, always has been for the last 100 years, whatever the situation was. Not a concern, and they could proceed with the purchase. Okay, so connections on the water side. Really important to get that right.
Johnny, just while we're on connections, you did,
yes.
I think it was, well, probably a slip of the tongue. Susan has just asked, did you say that in 2011 only foul sewers became the responsibility of the water authority, not surface water drains?
I may have done.
I think it was it was a slip of the tongue. In reality, no. Surface water, sewers were also, the only things that didn't get adopted. Well, there's various. Okay, we could talk about for a long time.
There's always edge cases, aren't there? Yeah.
But drains weren't adopted. That's the only thing. So stuff that only serves one property within the curtilage of that property still remains the responsibility of the homeowner. But anything else, like surface water, foul, everything else was adopted en masse in 2011.
And our report, for the most part, will have notes to inform you and your buyer of that situation. So if I omitted that or said something that didn't quite fit in with that, apologies. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, number 2, assets in the boundary. So again, this is a scenario where an asset was showing as being built over. Can you see that map there? That image. So you can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, you can see the red line sort of going through the middle, straight underneath that property that's numbered number 140. You can see there's an obvious asset there shown as built over. So the buyer, of course, wanted to understand, whoa, hang on a minute, what's the score there? Because has it got an agreement in place, a build over agreement, where it was done to a certain standard, but the buyer needs to know that, because they then could be responsible for allowing access to that asset if something needs doing with it. This is another Yorkshire Water one. And in fact, once it was sort of raised as a query, and because there'd been a red flag that there's an asset within the boundary, then Yorkshire Water were able to go and attend the site, identified that particular pipe was an unused main, and at Yorkshire Water's cost, they capped it off. Updated the record that it's an abandoned main. Everybody's happy. So again, that wouldn't have come up and the clarity wouldn't have been achieved if we hadn't put it in the report as a red flag. And other reports on the market might have come up as a notification, but it was only Yorkshire Water who were willing to go back in, have a look at the data, visit the site, cap off the pipe, change the records, produce another CON29 report. Everybody's happy. So that sort of trail back to the original data, whether it's right or wrong, of course, through centuries of building and overbuilding, it's really important that you've got that at your fingertips, which you do with the CON29. It was a good outcome. Capped it off, no worries. We're whizzing through these guys. We're doing well for time. 10:15. Look at that. Adoption agreements. Okay. You need to understand, especially with new developments, if they will be adopted by the water company, because otherwise it might sort of incur future liabilities for the homeowner if the assets are not adopted. So adoption agreements are very important. Increasingly, new developments might have things like a SUD scheme. So there could be maintenance charges for that, because it might not be run by the water company in the area. Things can always change, and I think plans are afoot for some of that to change going forward. But the buyer really needs to understand that correct position. So the property remains under an S104 agreement in this example for surface water, even though this foul drainage had been vested, had been adopted, if you like, or taken responsibility of by the water company. But it remains under an S104. Now, to complicate things on this example, the developer had gone bust. So the DWSN member, I meant to find out who it was, apologies, but I didn't. Let's say it's Anglian Water, why not, my guys? They were able to provide additional information to the buyer because they couldn't check with the developer anymore. And we were able to help about extra information about the outfall, where did the sewerage go, because it just wasn't clear. The DWSN member was able to confirm. In fact, surface water drainage in this example went to a watercourse. So it's not a very common occurrence because, well, or maybe it is, that a developer goes bust or runs off into the sunset with a part of the estate half built. You'd hope not, but sometimes it does happen. And so that red flag was the only thing that was able to give the buyer the flag it, inquire with the member who made the report. What's going on with this? Where does the surface water go to? We can't get any information out of the developer because they've gone walkabouts. So the customer was advised. It matched up with what was showing on the report. No further action needed. So all good stuff, but only came to light because it was red flagged at the start on the summary sheet. Our last one, internal sewer flooding. I always have to be careful here with my language. So internal sewer flooding is worse than it sounds. If you just imagine that sewerage coming into the property. So this is really essential for the purchaser to understand. They need to know if that property is ever flooded internally. Now, the water companies creating the CON29DW answer this question with all known knowledge. It's really important to understand if the water company, and I had one across my desk just the other day, if they have not been informed of any internal flooding and not been involved in any mitigation or putting that right, they do not know about it. And so we sent a report out that had no information. No, it's not at heightened risk of internal sewer flooding because it had not happened before. Okay, so that information, if it's happened before, is kept by the water companies and then used to inform the reports. But nobody had said anything about it. So none of the members know what they don't know. Does that make sense? So it's really important, this one, red flag. Oh, is it at risk of internal foul flooding due to overloaded public sewers? In this example, yes, it was. Basically increased risk. It's happened before is basically what this is saying. So it's really important to understand that. Now, just a word of warning, all the different members of DWSN might have slightly different rules. Well, it's the water companies, the sewage companies that they're part of, might have slightly different rules of what is internal flooding. And so Anglian Waters, for example, it's the main occupied building, but it would include a garage if it's attached and there's a connecting door. But other members might have just slightly nuanced qualifications for what's internal flooding, sewer flooding. And it is, by the way, sewer flooding, not just flooding from watercourses and such like. So in this example, the records confirm that the building was at increased risk of flooding, internal sewer flooding, because of a previous event. But in the CON29DW was included a mitigation report, not a whole separate sheet, pages, but just a simple summary of the mitigation that had been put in place. There'd been a non-return gully installed. Now, it may be that a more permanent solution was still needed, but that won't happen overnight. It could be all sorts of things in terms of strengthening the ability of the sewerage nearby to cope with what the issue was, or it could be that non-return gully solved the issue because it's kind of measured on a 1 in 30 year event. Things like storms and stuff that might overload the sewerage. So it could be that a further investigation, hydraulic modelling, all sorts of things are done in the future that would give a permanent solution. But if you get a red flag on that question 2.8, then it's really important that the investigations are held on that internal flooding. We've included that on a key red flag because it's just such an impactful issue. If it was to happen to a homeowner, you as a prospective buyer, you really, really want to know about that. Goes without saying. Okay, so we've gone through connections, we've gone through adoption agreements, we've gone through assets within the boundary, we've gone through internal sewer flooding. So there's 5 if you like, because it could be water connections and sewerage connections, so kind of 5 main red flags that I've gone through with some real life examples. If you take it in the whole, it just means look out for those red flags on the summary sheet. Get in touch with the producer of the CON29DW if you've got more questions or you want something investigating or you want the data to be checked. And especially if data you've got from the seller or the buyer or the TA6 form or other information contradicts that red flag. There's asset within the boundary. And you say, oh, no, I've got a map here. It doesn't show anything in the boundary. Okay, well, ask the question. Get it investigated further. That's kind of what we're saying.
Cool. I mean, there's a question that relates to that actually that came in, Johnny, from Sandy. It just said it was related almost exactly to the first example that we used. So just said I had a similar query on surface water with Severn Trent. That's why I'm asking it. The plan shows foul and surface water sewers at the front of the property, and we gave a response, which I've just quickly read through, which it was presumably shown that it was not connected for surface water, and there are obviously sewers out in the road, and we gave a response saying it is just connected for highways, almost exactly like the example that you gave. So
yes.
Being charged for highways because all customers are being charged for highway drainage in the Severn Trent region. And in this instance, I guess you're asking, do you need to go and check specifically whether it really is connected for surface water? What I will say about this is that is, in terms of the data held by water government, it's one of the most common errors in the data is connection for surface water, one way or the other. So I think when new properties are set up, it's almost automatically assumed they're connected for surface water when some aren't, and they have their own. They'll have a soakaway like Johnny does or whatever around the back of his property, and you'll be being charged for it. So a lot of people will then contact the water company and go, I don't think I'm actually connected. I've got a soakaway somewhere, and you're charging me. So that's the main way round it. It's wrong if you take them in.
And at the point of a transaction to a new homeowner, that's a perfect time to get that updated and changed. Yeah. But that's contacting the water company themselves rather than the producer of the CON29.
But in this particular instance, Sandy, you could obviously check with the homeowner if they're convinced that they're actually connected to those surface water, drains. Fine. Then you can almost you could challenge that, I suppose, and just say it is connected, and then you'll get charged for surface water in that particular property. But the records show it's not being connected. I'd probably leave it at that if I were on this particular instance.
And bear in mind, we're getting into sort of detail and nuances here. My property, for example, does drain to the highways out the front, but drains to a water course out the back.
That's like a lot of properties. You can get partial refunds for that sometimes. If both sides aren't, you can sometimes get partial refunds if your front of your property is connected, but the rear of your property isn't. It depends on the water company, I guess.
It's complex stuff at times, guys and gals. Those of you here, so it's complex stuff. So we're here to help. All the DDFSN members will know this stuff quite well, or can access people who do even deeper within the water companies. So if there's something about the report that you want highlighted or investigated, we're your guys to go and do that. So
well, there's been a follow-up question. How would they know they're not connected? What's the best way to try and locate that?
Well, often just a visual check of the property, can solve it. If somebody stood outside my property, looked up at the roof, and saw the collection of water in the what they called in the thingies at the top of the roof, and down a pipe and along the street and into a drain in the street. Boom. Yeah, I mean, maybe they're not all as easy as that, but yeah, a visual check apart from anything else. Yeah.
We had another one. Actually, it gives us a chance to advertise one of our previous webinars regarding build-over agreements. Please clarify when these are not required. In particular, is it correct they're not required for any and all works pre-October 2011? So you're citing October 2011 because it was the sewer transfer, I'm assuming, and I guess the point is that if a sewer was built over that was previously private and then became public in October 2011 during sewer transfer, clearly there wouldn't have been a build-over agreement in place for that, and therefore, you know, what do you need to do? Do you suddenly need to go and get a build-over agreement? No, you don't. And most water companies will do that in exactly the same way. If there's an issue with that particular sewer and they need to access it, then they will do so, and they will reinstate everything back to how they found it. You know, it's how it works. Yeah, basically. That's generally how it works in that particular regard. But we've got a way more detailed explanation of that in the webinar, which you can find on YouTube. If you just search for Drainage and Water Searches Network on YouTube, you can go back and watch the build-over agreements. There's so much detail in that one. That is super complicated, just because every water company deals with it in slightly different ways. Again, so you know, in difficult circumstances, it's always best to just contact the water company to find out. So I'm just rattling through a few more questions now. Oh no, you've answered that one already. How would someone know if they had a soakaway rather than a connection? Johnny, what does your soakaway look like?
So the gathering of the water in at the back of the house, a down pipe goes straight into the ground underneath. Now that could be a soakaway. In my example, there's a very, very long pipe then all the way down the length of my garden, where there's a little stream at the end of the garden and it outloads to there. But for most people within perhaps a more built-up area, perhaps, I don't know, it would just be a soakaway into the ground. You know, a purpose-built area that's a great big hole that's got hardcore in it and appropriate kind of structure to it that allows all the water that comes off the roof to just soak away into the earth. So a lot of properties will have that at the back.
Yep. Okay. Is there's an asset within the building? I presume you mean we should still ask about flooding, and the property could still be at risk of flooding because the answer regarding internal flooding.
Well, it could still be
about incidences.
It could still be at risk, but our CON29DW won't flag it as such, because unless it's been reported previously. Of course, yeah, every building in theory could be at risk of that, depending on where the sewerage pipes are. But just because I mean, we would flag that there's a pipe in the boundary. We would flag that there's obviously, we would flag there's a pipe in the boundary, an asset in the boundary, whether that's water or sewerage. Both questions are asked. So yes, if it says yes, try and understand with the seller of the property and their representatives, why, what does it mean? Look at our map if there's any assets showing on the report. Yeah, it needs investigating, needs clarity, for sure.
Sandy's also helped you out with your technical term of thingies is in fact
gutters. Yeah. Gutters. I just couldn't think of the word. I had a brain burp, as they say. Gutters, of course, they're called gutters. Yeah.
Appreciate that, Sandy. I preferred thingies, but that's fine.
Thingies.
Yeah. Okay, so that seems to be the last of the questions. Our details are on the screen there. Again, the YouTube channel is there for previous, those previous explanations of various different things. Please go back and have a look at them if you want to. You can fast forward through me rambling at the start of these and just get to the good stuff with Johnny, so that's fine. And polls, if you please could fill in the poll quickly when we finish this now, just to give us an idea of maybe what you want to see next time, how you think we've performed. You can do little heart emojis like that one that just appeared as well.
Yeah, whoever that was.
So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you. Good stuff.
We appreciate these are great webinars. Thanks so much. I appreciate you too, Sandy.
Well, we really appreciate you guys attending and listening to us. It's we know everybody is busy at the moment, which is good, but we're really grateful that you spend the time to come and listen to us.
Wonderful. Okay. Right.
Good.
Have a great rest of the day, folks.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks all.